Welcome gentle sirs and gentle madams. Today is Monday, it's the start of a new week and we have more changes happening to many specs in the game. This time around though, it's not something perhaps a little bit more boring and abstract, like looking at a whole bunch of talents being moved around or a whole bunch of talents being removed or being added. Now what we have gotten in the beta in the last couple of days is a series of buffs or a series of nerfs to the abilities themselves or the talent themselves, in terms of numbers, in terms of how much is this hitting for, how much is this healing for, how much CDR do I get off of this thing. These have been the changes that several of the specs have received in the beta. We have gotten changes to Blood Death Knight, Unholy Death Knight, Havoc Demon Hunter. We have gotten changes to Brewmaster Monk, to Mistweaver Monk, and a few others. So alphabetically, the first in line to have received changes is Blood Death Knight. Now this one is perhaps the least important one because it's Everlasting Bond, one of your last tier talents in your Blood Death Knight 3. Before, you used to be able to extend your Dancing Rune Weapon per every cast of Heart Strike and Death Strike by 0.33 seconds. Now instead it's going to be a flat 8 seconds increase to your Dancing Rune Weapon. Now you won't have to play around the casts of your two abilities to try to extend the buff as long as possible. Now it's just going to be flat, a flat 8 seconds increase. This one can be seen as both, depending on which stat you like more. Hasty Bargain, which has been renamed to Perseverance of the Ebon Blade, now gives you versatility instead of giving you haste. So, you know, I guess Verse is good for damage reduction, Haste is good for your playstyle, depending on which one you enjoy more having. What is certainly going to be enjoyed more was a pretty disappointing talent, mostly because of the small number it had, Improved Bone Shield. It used to give 3% additional haste. Now the improved version is going to give you 10% more haste. There is also, unfortunately, we have to mention the spec breaking nerf to Blood Death Knight. Now their whole kit is going to be doing 2% less damage. I know. How will Blood Death Knight ever recover in Dragonflight from this heavy blow? Now, after Blood, you have Unholy. Immediately starting from the bottom of the tree, one of your final points, Commander of the Dead, right here, gets changed, and by changed, I mean nerfed. Before, Commander of the Dead used to increase the damage of your Gargoyle and Army of the Dead by 40%. Now, the damage increase to these many pets actually is 30% damage increase. The nerfs, I am afraid, continue because Death Rot, your left side talent to get to Unholy Frenzy, has been nerfed as well. Before, Death Coil caused the target to take 2% increased shadow damage up to 20%. Now it only causes enemies to take 1% extra damage up to 10% for 10 seconds. So you have 2 extra seconds of duration, but the damage is halved in the effectiveness for Death Rot. Now, in case you start to feel bad with all of these nerfs, one after the other, there is actually a buff, a significant buff. Cleaving Strikes. Cleaving Strikes is one of your first entry-level talents in the General 3. On the right side, so the side for Unholy, has this talent that makes Scorch Strike hit up to 4 additional enemies while you remain in that of Decay. It's the same thing you have right now, basically. The passive you have right now in Shadowlands is the one that makes your Scorch Strike, cleave inside of Death and Decay. This has been buffed. Now, it's not just going to hit 4 enemies, now Cleaving Strikes is going to hit 7 additional enemies inside of your Death and Decay. And as a result, Defile, so your possible improvement of Death and Decay, is being given the same treatment. Defile also makes you hit 7 additional enemies inside of it. Let's continue the good news for Unholy, because there is another buff to Ghoulish Frenzy. This one is much more important. Ghoulish Frenzy being towards the bottom of your talents, one of the more powerful ones. Previously, your Dark Transformation increased the attack speed of you and your monstrosity by 4%, and then the second rank was 8%. Now it's 6 and 12%. So overall, at max rank is 4% more damage for you and your pet. Then we finish the entire thing for Unholy with a nerf, even though this one is not that relevant of a nerf. It's Plaguebringer. Plaguebringer is the option in the middle of the tree, and Plaguebringer gets the nerf. Before, it used to make Scourge Strike, causing the enemy to take damage from your diseases 150% faster. Now, it only causes them to take 100% faster damage instead of 150%. These were all of the changes to Unholy, a mixed bag of buffs and nerfs so far that they got in the beta, following up with Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, I have to say, as a spoiler already, Havoc is getting the best and strongest of all additions. The biggest buffs of all specs is actually going to Havoc for today. Demonic Wards makes you take 15% less damage taken instead of 5. This is quite significant for damage reduction to magical damage. And no, I'm not talking about this one for being the strongest of the buffs, by the way. I'm talking about this one. I'm talking about any means necessary. Mastery, Demonic Presence, which is this one if you don't play Havoc Demon Hunters. It's literally a very bland, boring, and uninteresting, you do more chaos damage. That Mastery now also causes your single school magic damage to be dealt as chaos. You know, why is this brokenly OP? It's already at the bottom of the tree, right? It's already one of your finishing moves in your talent tree. So why is this so strong? You start thinking about it and you're like, I'm thinking about I-Beam, I'm thinking about Chaos Strike. All this stuff is either doing chaos damage already or it's doing physical damage, which isn't a school of magic. So what exactly gets turned into chaos damage so it can benefit from my mastery? Well, it starts being a whole lot of things, you know, because Elysian Decree, your Covenant ability, is arcane damage, now gets turned into chaos. You have Fellblade, your talent down the general tree is surprisingly fire damage, also gets turned into chaos. You have Fiery Brand and the entire build around buffing your Fiery Brand damage. Of course, you have Immolation Aura as well, both of them do fire damage. You also have The Hunt, one of your other Covenant abilities you can take, which does nature damage. All of these things get turned into chaos damage. So even with middling mastery, even without stacking mastery as a Havoc Demon Hunter, which you normally don't do, and you go for haste instead, even then you get a plus 20% more damage to all of those abilities just by taking that talent alone. And it might even, you know, this is for a few weeks from now, perhaps by October, mid-October we might start knowing this, but it might even switch and move Havoc closer to needing mastery as one of the main stats, just because of this point, this talent point right here. And also why I said it's easily the most powerful of the changes for today, because Havoc also has one of the problems of really being weak later in the game. They don't have a lot of scaling, their mastery is poor, and they always have to be bailed out by borrowed powers and extra, you know, extra power-ups that come every tier to save them. But in Dragonflight, as we know, there are not going to be many borrowed powers. There is not going to be much that you can attach to the already existing kit of the Demon Hunter. Most of the power has to come from your talent tree, so this talent right here is going to help Demon Hunter a lot, becoming much more powerful. Then after this we have a change to Cycle of Hatred, one of your already existing talents in Shadowlands. It's right down the bottom as well in Dragonflight. Chaos Strike also reduces the cooldown of I-Beam by half a second and then by a full second when it refunds Fury. As you know, Chaos Strike has a chance to double strike and hit a second time. The change is that now it's no longer going to have an extra half a second reduction if it refunds Fury. Now, instead, it's going to be Blade Dance plus Chaos Strike plus Glaive Tempest to reduce the cooldown of I-Beam by half a second. This is going to, I don't know, maybe net out to be an actual increase. It's also decent because it pushes you to use Glaive Tempest more, to use your glaives as part of your rotation more, to get the cooldown reduction to I-Beam as well. Then, as the last of the changes to Havoc, we have yet another buff. And this one I was expecting it, because when I looked at the talent tree of Havoc, I look at this, you know, Essence Break. Essence Break is not exactly an iconic ability of Havoc. It's not exactly one of the mainstay picks of Havoc, right? It's a quite niche ability, not very often used throughout the existence of Havoc. So why was it at the bottom, unchanged from how it was in Shadowlands? It was already not that strong. So the change is that now, instead of slashing all the enemies in front of you for 60% of AP on a 20-second cooldown, now the cooldown is 40 seconds, but the damage is 280% attack power. So it has gotten over 4 times as strong, the initial burst of damage you do to all the enemies in front of you. There is also a tighter window for more damage but stronger. Before, it increased the damage of your Chaos Strike and Blade Dance dealt to all the enemies you hit by Essence Break for 6 seconds by 40%. Now it's 100% damage increase for 4 seconds. So the damage burst window after Essence Break is much stronger. The initial damage is 4.5 times as strong, but the cooldown goes from 20 to 40 seconds. Overall, still, it is a net buff, significant buff to the ability. Good that now, for being in such a late stage of your talent tree, for being literally the last capstone of your tree for the left side, it's good that the ability has been made, stronger at the very least. Then I know we started alphabetically into Death Knight, but we end right at the bottom of the alphabet with Warrior, because Warrior has also gotten a few changes, interesting ones like Barbaric Training. I would like to see more. I would like to see more talents like this one. Damage of Slam and Whirlwind increased by 25%. Boring. Damage of Slam and Whirlwind increased by 40%, but now cost 5 more Rage is definitely a more interesting talent, because it starts messing with your resources, starting to think if it's worth to do so much more damage at the cost of more resources being spent. It could be cool for combo points, for energy, fury, rage, etc, etc. It could be a quite interesting mechanic. This is not just for arms, it's also for fury, but at reduced effectiveness, and also for prot, but instead it's going to affect revenge for prot warriors. You also have a change to blunt instruments, which was quite weird. It was quite roleplay in how it worked, because it required two-handed maces and pole arms only. That was never gonna work, right? Imagine you loot an axe and you're forced to not use this talent just because you don't have the right weapon. Now, instead of having the two-handed maces or polearms increasing the damage and duration of Colossus Smash by 30%, now Colossus Smash damage is increased by 30% regardless of weapon, and its duration is increased by 3 seconds, plus Warbreaker gains an additional 20% damage. So it's a slightly buffed talent, and on top of that you no longer have the weird, weapon restriction attached to it. Another interesting talent, this is not just gonna be for arms, but for warriors, it's quite interesting. Now, Execute is usable on targets below 35% HP instead of 25% health. Talking about Execute, there is also a buff to your Execute, which is to sudden death. Previously, you have the chance to make your Execute free, usable on any targets, regardless of their health, and had a 1.5 proc per minute. Now, the proc per minute has been increased, but more importantly, the proc makes the Execute cost no rage, but still act as if you spent 40 rage. So still do damage as if you spent the max rage for your Execute. There is then a specific change to Fury Warriors. I'm not sure if they will enjoy this. Previously, Cadence of Fujeda was like the legendary you have in Shadowlands. Bloodthirst increases your haste by 1%, stacking up to 5 times. So in normal situation, this was a flat 5% haste increase. The change now is that Bloodthirst now increases your attack speed, your auto attack speed, by 5% for 12 seconds. So you are trading 5% haste with 20% attack speed as a Fury Warrior if you take Cadence of Fujeda. Then the last of the meaningful warrior changes is a change to your Spear of Bastion. This is a little bit more, Spear of Bastion goes from a 1 minute cooldown to a 1.5 minute cooldown, so you have to wait 30 more seconds to use it. What do you gain? You gain 165% attack power damage as the initial hit, and then 150% damage over 4 seconds, when previously it was 110 and 120. So we are talking about a 50-ish, actually exactly 50% damage increase for the initial hit, and then a 30-ish % damage increase for the second hit, at the cost of 30 more seconds of cooldown to the ability. Then to finish this rapid fire list of changes for today, we stroll by Guardian. Guardian has needed quite a lot of changes. we have gotten the changes to the Restoration Druid 3 and the changes to the Feral Druid 3. Guardian didn't really get anything yet. So finally, we see them becoming part of the list of changes. What do they get? Okay, they get 16% less damage and 16% less healing to their entire kit. Well, that's promising. That's looking good. You know, I'm not joking. Actually, look at this. Look at the glass half full about this nerf. This nerf is happening because they have been planning the updates to the talents of Guardian, and they are so strong. The new updated version of Guardian is so strong that Blizzard thought it was necessary to nerf all of their damage and healing by 16%. That's why Guardian, despite having no changes in a month and a half, out of nowhere gets nerfed in damage and healing by so much. In the next few days, you will see the new talents of Guardian, and you will think, now this nerf makes sense. It's either this, or it's a typo. Take whichever one you prefer. So for today, we can stop here. We could go longer, but I figured that making a 30-minute long video about a barrage of changes was a little bit too long. Plus, not many players might care about literally every single spec in the game getting changed. So for today, we have the changes to Blood, to Unholy, to Havoc, the not changes to Guardian, Druid, and Warrior as well. So for today, we can stop. Yet another video about the changes happening to the specs of Dragonflight. Of course, the deeper we go into the beta, the more these will become very often. You know, stopping the changes to the talents, like moving the talents around, swapping the amount of ranks in the talents, and all these type of changes. And we will move into changing the attack power scaling, the spell power scaling, the amount of damage, the amount of healing the spells will do, the abilities will do, etc, etc. That's when things are going to become juicy, and where you can start shaping the meta for the first season of Dragonflight, the powers of the specs for the first season of Dragonflight. So for now, we're stopping here. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of my Patreon supporters. We have gotten a handful of new ones in the last week or so, so thanks a lot, guys, for allowing me to continue to produce content for WoW, even still without a beta access. Thanks again, as usual, to Blizzard for the gift. You can support even more by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to this channel, of course. And for further social interactions, you can follow me on Twitter, as well as subscribing to my Patreon right down at these two links. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, you just need to trust me. You just need to believe that the mega rework of the Guardian Druid 3 is bound to come. I give it less than a week before we get the massive changes to Guardian.